Her hand trembled as the deep crimson wine filled the crystal goblet, 2 drops of pure nightshade, enough to kill Chicago's most ruthless crime lord. But when Damian Moretti raised the glass, he didn't choke. He met her terrified eyes, smiled coldly and whispered, "Drink it with me, future wife." Charlotte Jenkins was not the kind of woman who belonged in the criminal underworld. She was a 28-year-old sous chef with a brilliant palate, a laugh that usually filled the room, and a body that took up space. At 250 pounds, she was softly curved, unapologetically fat, and accustomed to the way high society types let their eyes slide right past her. To the billionaires, politicians, and mobsters who frequented the Grand Astoria Hotel, a plus-size woman in a stark white chef's coat was practically invisible. She was just the help, just a piece of the furniture that made the magic happen on their plates. Tonight, her invisibility was the only weapon she had. The heat of the commercial kitchen was suffocating, thick with the scent of roasted garlic-seared lamb and white truffle oil. Head chef Arthur Rossi was screaming orders at the line cooks, but Charlotte couldn't hear a word over the rushing blood in her ears. Hidden deep inside the pocket of her checkered chef's pants was a small glass vial. Her younger brother, Lucas Jenkins, was a fool. A sweet, well-meaning fool who thought he could outsmart the underground poker tables run by the Morello family. Now Lucas owed $200,000 to Anthony Morello, a man who collected debts in bone fragments and blood. 3 days ago, Morello's top enforcer, Dominic Castiglione, had cornered Charlotte in the alleyway behind her apartment. He hadn't asked for money. He had handed her the vial. "Damian Moretti is dining in the VIP room on Friday," Dominic had growled, pressing the cold glass into her palm. "Put this in his private reserve Pinot Noir. You do this, your brother walks. You don't, and I mail Lucas to you in a shoebox." Damian Moretti. The name alone was enough to drop the temperature in any room. He was the reigning head of the Moretti Syndicate, a cold, calculating boss who had ruthlessly expanded his empire across the Midwest. He was 32, brutally handsome, and famously paranoid. He didn't trust easily, which was why he only drank from a specific sealed bottle of wine kept in the Astoria's cellar, a bottle Charlotte had access to. "Jenkins," Chef Rossi barked, snapping her back to reality. "The rack of lamb for table 1 is ready. Bring out the Moretti reserve. And don't mess it up, or we're all dead." Charlotte swallowed hard, her throat feeling like sandpaper. "Yes, chef." She walked toward the heavy oak doors of the wine cellar, her thick thighs brushing together beneath her apron, her breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. Every step felt like a march to her own execution. She loved her brother, but she was no killer. She baked brioche. She whipped up mascarpone cream. She didn't end lives. Once inside the dimly lit cellar, she located the bottle, a 1990 Domaine de la Romane Conti. Her hands shook violently as she uncorked it using the hotel's specialized opener. The cork popped with a soft, hollow thud that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Charlotte pulled the vial from her pocket. The liquid inside was completely clear. Tasteless, odorless, a highly concentrated paralytic toxin. "If I do this, I am a murderer," she thought, tears prickling the corners of her eyes. "If I don't, Lucas is dead." A sob caught in her throat. She closed her eyes silently, apologizing to whatever God was watching, and tipped the vial over the neck of the bottle. 3 drops. That was all it took. She quickly resealed it, placing it carefully onto a silver serving tray alongside a single polished crystal goblet. The walk from the kitchen to the VIP dining room was a blur. The heavy double doors were guarded by 2 massive men in tailored Italian suits. They barely glanced at her. To them, she was just a plump, sweating kitchen worker. "Wine for Mr. Moretti," she murmured, her voice trembling. One of the guards patted down her apron quickly, completely missing the empty vial still in her pocket, and opened the door. The VIP room was lavish, draped in dark velvet and smelling of expensive cigars. Sitting at the head of the long mahogany table was Damien Moretti. He was an intimidating figure, broad shoulders, encased in a charcoal bespoke suit, sharp jawline, and eyes as dark and cold as obsidian. He was in the middle of a low conversation with his underboss, Matteo Bianchi, but the moment Charlotte stepped into the room, the conversation died. "Ah, the reserve," Damien said, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone that sent a shiver down her spine. "Pour it." Charlotte approached his side. Her hands were shaking so badly that the bottle rattled against the rim of the crystal goblet as she poured. The deep crimson liquid swirled in the glass, hiding its deadly secret perfectly. She stepped back, clutching the silver tray to her chest like a shield. "Drink it," she prayed, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Just drink it, and let this nightmare be over." Damien picked up the glass by the stem. He swirled it slowly, watching the legs of the wine streak down the crystal. He lifted it to his nose and inhaled deeply. Charlotte stopped breathing. Then Damien lowered the glass without taking a sip. He turned his head slowly, his dark, piercing eyes locking onto hers. The silence in the room stretched until it felt like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders. "You're sweating, Ms. Jenkins," Damien said softly. Charlotte froze. Her blood turned to ice. "He knows my name." Charlotte couldn't speak. Her tongue felt glued to the roof of her mouth. How did he know her name? I apologize, sir." She stammered, her voice barely a squeak. "It's very hot in the kitchen." Damien didn't look away. His gaze roamed over her face, taking in her flushed, rounded cheeks, the terrified wide eyes, and the rapid rise and fall of her chest. There was no disgust in his expression, no dismissal, just a cold, terrifying curiosity. "Matteo," Damien murmured, not breaking eye contact with Charlotte. "Leave us." Matteo looked surprised but nodded instantly. "Yes, boss." The heavy doors clicked shut, leaving Charlotte entirely alone with the deadliest man in Chicago. Damien set the wine glass back down on the table. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands over his stomach. "Anthony Morello is a predictable man." He began, his tone conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "He thinks he's clever, using civilian leverage. He found out your brother Lucas owed him 200 grand. He figured a chef with access to my food, a woman who blends into the background, would be the perfect assassin." Charlotte's knees buckled. She couldn't help it. Her legs gave out, and she hit the plush carpeted floor with a heavy thud, her silver tray clattering beside her. She began to weep deep, agonizing sobs, shaking her entire body. "Please," she begged, looking up at him through her tears. "Please don't kill my brother. I didn't want to do it. They said they would mail him to me in pieces. Please, Mr. Moretti, I'm so sorry." Damien stood up slowly. He walked around the edge of the mahogany table and knelt in front of her. For a moment, Charlotte squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the bullet, waiting for a knife. Instead, she felt a large, warm hand cup her cheek. Her eyes flew open in shock. Damien's thumb gently brushed away a tear tracking down her face. His touch was surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to his fearsome reputation. "You are not like the women who usually occupy my world, Charlotte," he said quietly, his eyes dropping to her trembling lips before meeting her gaze again. "The women I know are sharp, starved, ruthless. they would have poisoned me and smiled while I choked. His hand slid down to her jaw, his thumb pressing lightly into the soft flesh of her neck. You are soft. You're shaking like a leaf, and yet you still poured the glass. I had to, she whispered, a fresh tear spilling over his hand. I love him. Damien let out a low hum, a sound of contemplation. He stood up towering over her and walked back to the table. He picked up the poisoned glass of wine. I knew about Morello's plan 3 days ago, Damien stated calmly. I had Dominic Castiglione intercepted 10 minutes after he handed you the vial. I know exactly what is in this glass. Aconite. A nasty, painful way to go. Charlotte stared at him bewildered. If you knew, why did you let me pour it? A dangerous, predatory smile curved Damien's lips. Because I needed to see if you actually had the nerve to do it. And you did. He tilted his head, studying her. Stand up, Charlotte. She scrambled to her feet, her legs feeling like jelly. She wiped her damp cheeks with the sleeve of her chef's coat, feeling incredibly self-conscious. She was a fat, sweaty, crying mess in front of a billionaire mob boss in a tailored suit. I am in a very precarious position, Damien said, pacing slowly. The feds are breathing down my neck. My legitimate business front's real estate imports are being audited. I need a distraction. More importantly, I need a shield, an alibi. To the public, I am a ruthless gangster. I need to soften my image. Charlotte blinked, trying to keep up. I don't understand. I need a wife, Damien said bluntly. A woman completely disconnected from the life. A civilian. Someone who looks innocent. Harmless. He gestured toward her. A sweet, plump, hard-working pastry chef who clearly loves her family enough to commit murder for them. You are the perfect candidate. Charlotte's jaw dropped. A wife? Yes, he replied. And here is my offer. You will marry me tomorrow at City Hall. You will play the part of a devoted, adoring wife for the press, the police, and my rivals. In exchange, I will wipe out Lucas's debt. In fact, I'll wipe out Anthony Morello entirely. Your brother will be safe, and you will be protected under my name. You want me to marry you? She repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. But I just tried to kill you. Which is why I know you take direction well when properly motivated. Damien shot back, his eyes flashing. And let's be clear, Charlotte. This isn't a request. This is an ultimatum. He stepped closer to her, invading her personal space. The scent of sandalwood and danger rolled off him. He looked down at her, his gaze sweeping over her full figure, lingering on the curves hidden beneath the bulky white coat. If you say no, he whispered, his voice dropping to a lethal quiet, I will let Morello do whatever he wants. To your brother, and then I will handle you for attempting to murder me in my own territory. Charlotte stared into his dark eyes. There was no bluff in them. He was dead serious. He was forgiving her for trying to assassinate him, but the price of that forgiveness was her freedom. She would be tethered to a monster, forced into a gilded cage. But Lucas would live. Okay. She breathed the word barely escaping her lips. I'll do it. I'll marry you. Damien's hard expression cracked into a genuine, satisfied smirk. He reached out his hand, wrapping firmly around her thick waist, pulling her flush against his solid chest. Charlotte gasped at the sudden, intimate contact. Good girl, he murmured against her ear. He reached over with his free hand, picked up the glass of poisoned wine, and walked it over to a potted fern in the corner, pouring the deadly liquid into the soil. Pack your things, Charlotte Jenkins, Damien ordered, turning back to her with a possessive glint in his eye. Tomorrow you become a Moretti, and God help anyone who tries to poison what is mine. Follow-up. Are you ready to see how Charlotte handles her first night in Damien's heavily guarded mansion?